I wanted to talk about Psych Soc today because, in my experience, digesting and regurgitating facts was not the full story when it came to Psych Soc. And indeed, the 100th percentile score that I got on Psych Soc, I do not owe not even one bit to my memorization of a bunch of different facts through Anki. I am talking about the fourth section on the medical college admissions test, the MCAT, the psychological, social, and biological foundations of behavior. Psych Soc comes after MCAT test takers have taken three fully packed sections. Two of them are packed with science, namely biology and chemistry, and one of them is packed with any old subject they want to throw on, the critical analysis and reading section, CARS, the one that I use as the foundation of my approach to tutoring for the MCAT. Anyway, now we're exhausted because it's been hours and we are hit with this final section. So, what is it they could possibly want aspiring doctors to be able to spit out? Well, a lot of really outdated and generalized facts about psychology and sociology. That's what I find that the approach that many test takers take is to say, well, Psych Soc is about memorization, and they gravitate towards what is marketed as the best option for memorizing something really quickly. So there are a myriad applications, but one of them that is particularly popular is Anki. Essentially, what this app helps you to do is digest as many small facts as possible, and it spaces them out automatically. It does all of the organizational work of studying for you. It's a computer program that shows you that fact on the day that it thinks you need to see it in order to know all of the facts by test day. So, when it comes to this fourth section, which is seemingly so memory based, they often gravitate to Anki. So, this is a very common tool for the Psych Soc section, less so for the two more science based sections. So, why is it that Psych Soc gets the Anki treatment? That's because it seems like it's a completely memory based section. I wanted to talk about Psych Soc today because, in my experience, digesting and regurgitating facts was not the full story when it came to Psych Soc. I used Anki myself for a couple of months during my prep, and I ditched it once I had built up the confidence to say, I don't need to act like this is working. Because for me, it was not. I would spend too long every day reviewing topics that were not important for me to be reviewing. While there are different methods that you can use when you interact with Anki to optimize that experience and to make sure that you're seeing exactly what you want to, I wanted to take a shortcut and just look at and memorize exactly the facts that I wanted to memorize. So, in my experience, the tool that many gravitate towards when they're studying for this section of the MCAT, it didn't work for me. I encourage my students to try it. I encourage them to go through Anki. It's a flashcard app, and there are these publicly available decks. So it's like a deck of cards. And I encourage them to download those decks, try them out, and then take practice tests and see what their scores are. For me, that score went up markedly when I stopped using Anki and instead studied exactly what I intuitively felt was important after having gone through all of the AAMC material. So, Aiden, if you weren't using Anki, what the hell were you doing that you scored 100 percentile on this exam? I got into the habit on basically every MCAT section of compartmentalizing. So for Psych Soc, this came in the form of what I call a cue sheet. This was nothing new for me. I was an art history major back in college. I would write out all of the buildings just on one piece of paper as sort of cues. And so I would point to one of the building names and just do a brain dump of everything I knew about that building. I didn't need a computer system to tell me what I didn't know because I would look at the term and be like, I don't know that building. This is what I used to nail Psych Soc. So the document looks like this, and it has just every term that I encountered in this section on my AAMC materials. This is a 7 page long document. It's a little scary, and I don't think I needed to go that long with it. In retrospect, I went a little crazy with that document. The principle remains that having everything in a piece of on a piece of paper that you could just print out, you could crumple it up, shred it, do whatever. The compartment is the paper, the compartmentalization is the act of putting that information on the paper. So you have these psych social terms. What do you do with those terms in order to memorize them? How do you memorize things, Aiden, if this is not a memorization based section? Well, it absolutely is memorization based, as all of them are. You remember patterns of analysis for paragraphs, you remember terms that you learned from Psych Soc. My method of remembering them, as opposed to remembering the reverse of a flashcard, was to isolate the part in my learning where I had that aha moment about every single concept. Neutral stimulus, conditioned stimulus, classical conditioning, operant conditioning. And I would just point to them and think to myself, well, what's going on with that? Could I answer any common question about that for every single one of the terms on that sheet? There are hundreds of them. I knew every single one of them cold, which means just point to them, boom, there it is. That's how I studied for psych social. I just want to mention one other thing, the analytic techniques that you need to apply in psych social. There are many questions that are based on research studies. And what they do is they show you methods and they show you some results and they ask you questions based off of that study. So they need you to be able to interpret a study that is completely new to you, you've never heard of it, in real time. In order to study for that, I did cars practice and biochem practice. That's because not a single psych social study was more confusing to me than the biology study. The stuff where they have like enzyme function when you add in this inhibitor and that inhibitor, and then you have to look at the graph. That was the most complicated for me, Aiden. So I just practiced with those. And then when it came to psych social, it was pretty much smooth sailing because not a thing they could show me on that section was more scary than what I had seen on biochem. So I see psych social much less as a simple, oh, you need to regurgitate facts, and more as an understanding of a bunch of different concepts and an application of analytical techniques that you should be using throughout the entire exam. And that's why you could actually use psych social being at the end of the exam to your benefit because you've been analyzing all day long. What's another 90 minutes of using that analytic brain, seeing a sentence, chopping it up, and making sense of it for yourself with the purpose of answering questions correctly. So Chem Phys, 95 minutes, 10-minute break. Cars, 90 minutes, and then 30-minute break. Biochem, 95 minutes, and then 10-minute break. I'm getting exhausted just reading this. It's a horror. By the time you get to Psych Soc, you've already done at least 5 hours in testing day mode. I think I brought like coffee with me and I had some coffee on the day and I also had like snacks. I brought yeah, I just gavoned that in the middle of test day, like right before Psych Soc, just reloading the cannon. I encourage my students to figure out a game day eating plan because you don't want any gastric surprises on test day. Man, oh man, is it one of those things you could just so easily figure out before test day? And that's relevant to Psych Soc because really it's an exhaustion test. The test takers know that they put it at the end of the test. It's not a mystery to them that you're going to be tired. Prepare for that exhaustion. Also, another thing that will help with that is to schedule your practice tests so that Psych Soc comes at the same time every day that you're doing a practice test. Indeed, on test day, I was more prepared in terms of my circadian rhythms to hit Psych Soc at an energy high. So finally, I am an MCAT tutor. I am starting medical school this August at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine in the Bronx. I took the MCAT back in April of 2025. I was a non-traditional student. I decided I want to pursue medicine after I'd already gotten my bachelor's in a different field. I worked full time for a little while. I took all of the classes here in Brooklyn at Brooklyn College. Now I'm tutoring for the MCAT to share what worked with me in the hopes that maybe it could help someone else. And I continue to do that throughout med school when I have the time. And I set those times by having them on my website. You can go to my website and I ask that students first book me for a 30-minute consultation. That's free of charge. So you can do that and then never see me again if you'd like, but I hope you stick with me. So that's who I am. I'm a tutor. I scored a 527. I don't know if I mentioned that. I got a 100th percentile on every section except for cars, which is 99th. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I wish you the best of luck. Persevere. You must remember simply from your own belief in yourself that it is worth it. All right. Thank you again.